G'day, welcome back to my Corp string challenge. Now I have left this a couple of weeks, probably one or two, just to sort of give it a little bit more of a buffer zone to see if there are any updates. There was an update today, but it wasn't accompanied by any sort of comment of any kind. So I assume that nothing much has really changed with that one. Okay, so today I want to bring in Australia. I'd like to bring in a small country too, because we've got a couple of little ones over here that we will eventually bring in too. I mean, we could sort of, I guess, bring in all the island nations in one sweep. So maybe let's do Australia on its own. Starting off with our capital city of Canberra. Very slowly loading in. Now, I think that at one point when... That it hasn't even... Oh, is that it just did? Alright, I was expecting it to get bigger, but it's not the biggest of Australian cities. I think that when they sort of introduced... at one point the game went incredibly slowly, and they gave the feedback that the thing was that the game saved every single time a plane arrived at a destination. And once you've got, say, this many planes, that's an insane level of save. I think that what happens now is it saves every time you build another connection. So that's why I continue to struggle through, is because each time I build something, it has to rethink about it, and you can see that's a lot of thinking that it goes through. Okay, so let's have a look at what cities we want to join where. So this guy here is quite out of the way compared to the other Russian cities, but I do want to sort of jump into the these sort of northern parts. He's closest to this guy, but then he's pretty far away from everything else. Potentially we can have him just run between those two. But I think that we're better off getting him connected at the top here. You can see that think process there as we get these going. I think this makes sense as well just to bring in Australia too, because I feel like I've got a lot more building I've got to do than the amount of countries that I've got left, so I sort of have to gradually bring them in just to make sure that I've got enough sort of things to open to finish the series off with all cities actually connected. So let's get these guys upgraded, and then we'll just connect them across. So I feel like what happens is each time I build a station, the whole map goes, okay, what is now my path? What is this city's path to there? What is this city's path to there? And they sort of all math it out. And I imagine that since there's essentially 100 connections between a lot of these, that it sort of like has to build these really long paths to go about it. I mean, I would be curious if I, say, broke all this down and then just built it that, say, for example, one of the one city challenges, so like, say, everyone in the world just went to Warsaw. Does that make that simpler? Because every route is only going to be a maximum of 2 connections. That either you're going to Warsaw or you're going from Sydney, Australia to Warsaw to Los Angeles. That would be a really wild map to see at this point with this many cities. A one city all connections setup. Alright, let's throw the question out for that. If I was to do a one city... If I was to, say, take this map, remove every connection that I've got on it, one by one, and then put one city as a central point for all other cities in the world to connect to, what city should it be? Now, I am going to nominate this guy, Al Jaff, Libya, because he's so far removed from everywhere. Like, you wouldn't have these tiny little, like, guys getting drowned in the middle. Like, everyone would bounce out. And he's so central to the world. If you look at him there, it is right there. I actually think that would be a kind of really interesting looking map. Like, how much of a flower sort of flourish does that go? Well, without even zooming in there, I'd say that's Sydney that we've gotten. there. Yep. My town of birth. Okay. Let's keep chipping away at getting Russian cities in here. So, I feel like there's a little group of cities at the top here. Say these 5 that are also separate to this. So if we make that split there. Actually, I think we go to there. There. Actually, I don't even think we take him. I think we sell that. We go these 2 across. And then those 2. Now, St. Petersburg is quite close to this connection here. But I think that it can be used as a closer guy to Petrozavodsk. Okay, so let's get these guys upgraded. Here's a question for you. If you know anyone who speaks Russian, or they are Russian rather, not that they speak Russian, that Russian is their first language and they speak English as a second language, do they pronounce O's at the end of words as A's? Because I know 2 Russians, from one who's from sort of down this region, the south. What do you call that? Just the south? Southwest. Down there. And the other one is from all the way over here. And both of them speak, pronounce O's as A's. So for example, something like Lenovo. They'd say Lenova. And it's just interesting because both of them are so far apart in sort of like the way that they learn English. One of them learn it in school, the other one just moved to Australia and learn it. So like, that's not the one I want to get rid of. So a very varied way in the way that they were presented in English and that they still both have it, I think is fascinates me. The other thing I've learned from spending time with them is that, I'm sure I've told this in a video before, I don't think a Flight Corp video though, that a C, the letter C, like the shape of the letter C in the English alphabet is the letter S in the Russian alphabet. So when you think about something like USSR, but then in Russia you'd see it as CCCP, those C's are S's. So it's the S, yeah, sound sort of coming through. And I have it a lot that that they'll say when using initials, something like CBA, they'll say SBA, and it's taken me a while to get used to it and just remember that no, she means C. Slowly catch the monkey here. Yeah, if I removed all of the cities of the world and then rebuilt it, the other concern I have is how long would it take? Not because, like, if you ignore the fact of how long would it take if this game was moving at the pace of when you've only got, like, Europe unlocked, but how long would it take when you've got this many cities and this amount of downtime between every single connection that you build? Update 2 actually. So one thing I did talk about a few videos back was I was saying that I was looking at a trip where I was going to Cuba. Thank you for those that commented on it and did offer suggestions. Things about different routes to fly and what options. I did suddenly cool off on the idea of going to Cuba when I learnt that Cuba is on America's state sponsors of terrorism list. Now, the problem isn't the fact that America considers them a state sponsor of terrorism, because that's old news, although they only were just recently put back on. The problem is that because they're on that state-sponsored list of terrorism, it means that you lose the ability. And sorry, let me correct that. If America knows that you've been to Cuba, you would lose the ability to travel to the United States on a ESTA visa. You would have to get an actual visa. You'd have to apply for an actual visa every single time you would go to the US. And I go to the US enough that is not appealing. So that wiped Cuba out for me. Having spoken to people who have gone to Cuba, they say what actually will happen is that you get a travel card when you go to Cuba, and a lot of times that they'll stamp the travel card, not your passport. So as long as you don't have that travel card in your passport, America wouldn't know that you've been there. But it is such an inconvenience for me that I'm like, I don't think that's it's overly appealing. So pivoted the trip again. What I had decided, and I think I hadn't decided this since the prior to the last time I was discussing this, but because I was going to Cuba, I was like, oh, let's go. I think I was going to the United States in the last time I mentioned it on here, but I changed that instead I was going to go to Mexico City. And I was like, all right, well, what would I do in Mexico City? And I started looking around and seeing some things that looked really fascinating and interesting to go see. I'm a fan of Frida and her artwork, and I realized I could go to Frida's home in that museum, go see some of her artworks in some of the museums around in Mexico City. I thought the Basilia of Our Lady Guadalupe looked quite interesting. The giant old pyramids that are nearby Mexico City, that seemed neat. I love Mexican food, so that would be a really cool reason to go and see it. So I was like, when I sort of gave up on going to Cuba, I was like, but I really want to go to Mexico City now. So shifted plans too, and I will show you on the map once we've got this guy upgraded. There we go. So staying in the same region. I'm not even sure which one of these countries actually exist in here. They all exist, great. So fly from Melbourne to LA down to Cancun. Then just a little bit south of Cancun, there's a place called Playa del Carmen. Go from there across, go see, and then from here down, then across top of Guatemala into Belize, and then up the coast. So what you're going to see here is a lot of the Mayan ruins, followed by sort of a couple of days, I guess, rolling up the coast there, which has got a nice barrier reef. I think second biggest in the world, only to Australia's one. And then from there, fly from Cancun to Mexico City. And then from Mexico City, fly to San Fran and back to Melbourne, which I think is a really neat trip. I didn't realize where the sort of Mayan ruins were and that they were so nicely bunched together. So I think that'll be cool. So with that in mind, 2 questions I got for you if you've visited this part of the world. 1, Mexico City. Any recommendations? I'd love to hear them. Things, if you've been, things that you loved, things that you would advise against, that you think they're overrated, places you ate that you really liked. Hit me with them. I am right in the process of sort of trying to map out what I want to do there. I've got a few months till I go. But anyone who knows me could tell you that I love planning. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts on anything Mexico City. Second thing, I think Playa del Carmen as well. If you've been to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, just south of Cancun, to me it sounds like it's just like a mini Cancun. It's sort of very touristy in that regard. It's not so much a place you would go to see things, as much as it is just you'd go for the beach and that sort of beach lifestyle. So if you got anything that you recommend there, because having a look there, I wasn't really sort of like sold on too much. The only thing I really saw was there's like some caves called the Rio Secreto, I think they are, that are just south of Playa del Carmen. That seemed kind of interesting. But again, if you've been, yeah, absolutely let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, where to eat, what to do. Because I do read your comments, and you can probably tell by the amount of comments that get likes and little drawing dead hearts. So what we're looking at here is we're basically dividing up Russia. The question, I guess, is what if the Russian, what if Russia collapsed and they were divided amongst the different countries? Who would claim what? And I am boldly saying that if Russia went, the entire south is going to Georgia. Georgia is going to be a huge superpower at that stage and just take over all of it. I reckon 100% there are going to be a lot of cities that are going to be left at 200. Volgograd. Volgograd's definitely somewhere that I've been in the past curious to visit because they have a big old statue. And I love statues. In fact, one of the things that's kind of really fascinating to me about the Basilia of Lady Guadalupe is there's a statue outside that's sort of the Mother Mary with a whole line of native... what one when they're down there? Are they still Indians? Native Americans sort of giving the sort of coming to her essentially, and it's just such a cool sort of series of statues together that I'm like, that's enough for me. you built yourself a nice statue. That's won me over. I wonder what the relationships are like with some of these border cities and the countries nearby. Like, something like, say, Sochi here. Look how close that is to Georgia, and how far removed, say, that would be from Russia. Is there a very Georgian feel to it? What are these cities like? I feel like surely there must be a variety of style in Russia that's so big that you can really feel the difference in different parts. I realize one thing I need to fix is Mongolia on the other side, but it's so annoying to have like sort of undone it and now I have to redo it again. That I'm like, we'll come back to that in a while. Let's approach some cities we've not looked at all before. So I think in part what we're doing here is we're just sort of chipping up into the cities of Russia that once we've got some sections that you can sort of at a glance go, well, it makes sense that that's where these guys should be connected. That then we sort of dig a bit more in and we can look at what's there and go, all right, well, this is probably the way that this should all be connected. Now, I think probably what we want to look at is here, and yep, I am back to Mongolia. So the only things east of here are the ones that are down here, which have been claimed by Japan and China, and a little bit North Korea. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this guy back into a loop so that he can come back this way. Now, let's think about how we need to get this guy to connect up into here. So, assumably those two are going to connect there. No, I changed my vote there, and this is going to be the lazy option. that I'm going to throw out on this one. Get rid of that. I'm going to get this guy to connect there. Pick up on that one? No. Now you can see the length of this flight right here. And we can say that's the longest flight in Mongolia, or in the area of Mongolia. So it does leave Mongolia. So what we want, we're going to connect these two guys across here. Gonna cut that. And we're going to cut that. Going to cut that. And we'll cut that. So what we'll do is we'll get the cities of Mongolia will just leave in their sort of snake form as they wind across the country. That guy there needs upgrading. Actually, a few of the jets do one here. Alright, then what we'll do is we'll upgrade that one. Alright, and then what we'll do is we'll just run these guys across the top and then swing them down to here, which is why we cut this guy off, because I think that that's probably the closest city to this guy, just ahead of that one. So we've got that connection. We will run this guy up there. Slowly. Did that do anything? Maybe? Yes. Someone mentioned too, I hope that if you're watching this, you are watching this on 1.5 speed. The combination of the choppiness of this, as well as the I think that it complements the pace that I talk at, that you can listen to me chipping away at 1.5. I mean, I certainly wish I was playing this at 1.5 at this speed. Okay, so next thing that we need to do is then get this group of guys connecting in here. So I reckon we cut this short little flight there. Let's check to make sure this guy's actually upgraded. He is. He's just overloaded for people wanting to make the insane journey to Los Angeles from over here. It does break my heart to think that when an airport hits its population max, it just dumps those passengers. That it goes like, nah, you've got more passengers than I can take. We're done here. Because it means that there's people that could travel so far and then just get to, I don't know, London on their way to LA, and someone say, I'm sorry, your flight's been cancelled. Oh, well, can I wait in the airport for another flight? I'm sorry, that's a ridiculous notion. You live here now. Okay, so we've got this little hook here. I have these guys cutting around the bottom edge. And then what we'll do is we'll get this guy along the top to make these connected through. I would love to see what the like how many cities I can actually get in Australia. Like, does it really? Is it one that does really open up and give you a lot? I realize that there's one challenge I think that was set in Australia that I feel like could have offered a fair few, but. And apologies, I haven't even read our fun facts about Australia. It's a good trivia question for me. Well, a lot of the other ones we've seen have been like the Republic of. Is there a more formal name for Australia than Australia? Well, let me try and guess my my stats here that I normally do. So, are we're not the Commonwealth of Australia, are we? We are just. I want to say we're just Australia. There's no more formal title to our name. The Federation of Australia? No, it'd be we're just Australia. I'd say very tentatively. And population as of if it says as of 2022, 27 million, are we? Let's find out and see how well I know my own country. Officially the Commonwealth of Australia. There we go, I did get it. I mean, I didn't lock it in as my answer, but at least the first thing I guessed that if it was something else, it was officially the Commonwealth of Australia. Good. It is a... Actually, this is another one. We'll chuck a trivia question on me for in a little bit. So, it's a sovereign country comprising of mainland of the Australian continent, the island of Tasmania, and numerous smaller islands. Now, we'll see how I do with my naming numerous smaller islands. It is the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent. Now, I don't know what the word inhabited... Right, I was going to say, why is it counting inhabited? Because Antarctica must be, what, drier, flatter? So we've now just got a lovely little row that we've got Newcastle, Sydney, Canberra, and now my current home of lovely Melbourne. Yep, if you stand on the coast, you can have a straight shot to Antarctica. Occasionally, I think we get hit with a wind. That is an Arctic wind, Antarctic wind, rather. So this is the Antarctic, this is the Arctic. I don't know how anyone else remembers it, but I always remember it by going, there are animals in the north, not in the south. One of those animals is an Arctic fox. Arctic, it's not the Antarctic fox, so the bottom one must be the Antarctic. Yep. That's the process I go through every single time I try and remember that. Alternatively, you could say, well, the one down the bottom is Antarctica. But no, that'd be too easy. Where was I even? Over here. Okay. It is 7.6 million square kilometers, or 2.6 square miles, million square miles. 0.6 square miles. It's a really big split between those two. All right, let's just add this one guy in here. Let's see how I did. Population as of 2023 is 26 million. So I was too eager. We have less people than I thought. Just feels crowded. That's right, a country my size having 26 million people. Whoa, too much, mate. And what do we got? So, what was our history? Do I have a history there? No. Okay, so let's jump onto islands. So, it is saying, so for those that don't know Australia too well, it does say the Australian continent, as we wait for this map to catch up with us, the Australian continent, the island of Tasmania, so this is Tasmania down here, absolutely beautiful part of the world if you ever get the chance, and numerous smaller islands. Okay, so where are my smaller islands? So, what do I think they're gonna, assuming they order them in size, I'm gonna say, there's Adelaide, it's King Island. King Island there. There's a second island here. I can't think of its name. King Island and something. It's almost like Tasmania's got quotation marks above it. We've got Norfolk Island, which is all the way over here. We've We've got the Torres Strait Islands, which is like a couple of hundred islands that sit just up here at the very north. We've got Rottnest Island over here. So I would say the biggest one is that's not Tasmania is King Island. I want to say King Island's the next biggest one, followed by Norfolk, and the other one down here that it's nothing on it but paddocks and cows. I've never visited either of them. I don't think any of the Torres Strait Islands are overly big. I think there's a big island up here too. It's possibly not even an island. It might just be an extension of the Northern Territory. And then Rottnest. All right, lay it on me. What have I got? Largest islands. Tasmania. Melville Island in Northern Territory. So I think that's hopefully the one I got. Kangaroo Island down here. That's an obvious one I missed. Root Island, which must be somewhere up here. Bathurst Island, also up there. Fraser Island over here. Flinders Island. So that's it. Flinders Island is the other one that's down here. And King Island. So I didn't even get the right one. And Norfolk Island isn't even listed here. Australian territories. We are not seeing Norfolk Island at all. Huh. Alright. Well, oh, there's Norfolk Island. Right there. External territories. Norfolk Island, 2007. So why aren't you telling me about Norfolk Island? Norfolk Island. If you've ever seen the Mutiny on the Bounty, or any of those stories around that, the guys that did the mutiny went and moved to some island that eventually wasn't good enough for them or working out, so they moved again, and that was Norfolk Island that they moved to the second time. What was the one I just joined? That was this one, right? So did I upgrade him properly? No. I think I undercut my confidence at we're the Commonwealth of Australia because there was so few other Commonwealth nations that have the words Commonwealth of in front of them. And I didn't think that we were the only ones that did that. Okay. So now we're left with this. This whole part here, I think, is just a nice, easy puzzle that we can solve. I think that possibly these two cities here will just join in here, while the rest of this will actually just be part of a bubble that runs back into the Ukraine. So we're claiming all of this territory for Ukraine. The only question mark that I have is these 5 guys at the back. Because this guy is a long shot no matter where he goes. If we're talking string challenge, we can't do that because that string cuts across. So he has to connect directly to the city that he's connecting to, which I think is this guy. Which means that this horribly long route is going to appear in the middle of Asia and the rest of the world. Let's not mess around with this one. We'll definitely give them a second plane straight off the bat. Let's get these guys up here. So at least we're making some progress there. We've knocked off chunks of Russia, and we finally fixed Mongolia and got it connected to the greater world. Still have a huge amount of Russia to pick the pieces off there. Maybe there is a divide. Maybe all of these countries, these cities here rather, connect into Kazakhstan, and it's a route up that way that goes back to Ukraine. Nothing else, at least when I get to build a new line, it is that level 5, which is like minorly inconvenient because I'd love them to just be 6, but at least it means that they're at least getting a 5 to start with and I don't have to start from scratch. I don't know if I mentioned too that before I started today, there was an update for the game. It wasn't large and there's no update notes. So, who knows if there actually was anything that came of that. And safe as certain it wasn't to do with the efficiency of moving when you've got too many cities. Okay, so that is us for today with a bit of Russia knocked off. There's so many of it that it doesn't even look like too much was done, but you can see all the edges there are trimmed. This part down here is gone. All of that's connected. And we are still hugging the southern side of Australia. We do eventually need to get some cities up the top. Perth over here is going to be the most isolated city. And quite possibly will be the end of the line. I think that what we might do, depending on if we get, say, Cairns and Townsville and things along this line, we might either swing all the way around and come back into Australia and then across to Perth. Or, I see anyway at Perth, or we'll just never connect Perth. And they can stay isolated like they want to be. Anyway, there we go. So let's zoom out a little bit. So at least this is going to have a nice picture of something going on with Australia. Any questions or comments, as always, feel free to chuck them below. And until next time, catch you later. See ya.